Hi, welcome back to Cheyenne Wyoming Urban Gardener. This is Debbie, and surprise, it is September 24th, and we still haven't had anything frozen yet, which is highly unusual, really, for Cheyenne, Wyoming. We're in Garden Zone 5A, 5B, so we can get temperatures dropping and snow usually at the beginning of September, heck, even into late August. But for this year, it has been extremely forgiving, I will say. We had a very rough start to the beginning of the gardening season with cold temperatures in the soil that prevented a lot of squash from germinating and cucumbers from germinating and a whole bunch of other things. So a lot of things have changed regarding the season. It has become longer, which I had said at the very beginning. I hoped, since we had such a rough beginning, that we hoped for a later fall, which is what has happened. So we're technically into fall as of September 21st, but it still looks like summer out here, at least tail end of summer. Now, temperatures are not extremely high. We're looking at low 70s up to the upper 70s at this point. I think the highest temperature in the next 2 weeks is going to be the high 70s. I've had to pause a couple of times because I'm watching my grandson today. My daughter is up at the University of Wyoming and she has to sing today in a choir. So I am watching my grandson today, and it is Saturday, again, September 24th. And we still have our yellow pear tomatoes. Absolutely just keep on going. This plant is over 6 feet tall. It actually bends over at the top because I've ran out of the tallest stick that I have. So you can see that it just keeps on going. So we have repotted it, so it has a larger pot than it did at the beginning of the season. So it has really just kept on filling out, and it still has root buds at the base of the plant that just keep right on coming on. So anyway, we've got a couple of tomatoes on it that are getting ripe, but overall it is still blooming and still producing like crazy, and it will until the frost happens. We've dipped down to the lower 40s a couple of times, all the way down to 40, and one morning it was 39, and it still hasn't killed everything out here. We have cantaloupes still going, and surprisingly enough, the vines are looking pretty rough at this point, but they are still going strong. You can see our Crenshaw melon in there still just going right along, and we have a cantaloupe right here at the top. We've got a couple more cantaloupe down in there and 3 more Crenshaw melons that just keep right on going. We still have tomatillos that are setting tomatillos on the vines, and the pots that we have for them are pretty small, but I'm not going to transplant them at this point because we are so late in the season. But you can see we do have tomatillos on here, and I can feel some tomatillos inside, but they're definitely not finished yet. They're just not quite filled out. This one is getting pretty full, though. This is one of the few on the larger plants that is more canopy style than going straight up like this guy. So these are supposed to be the giant Verde Salsa tomatillos, but they are not quite huge, really. They are still about the same size as my other tomatillos, and I think that's just because the temperatures are so cool. We still have cucumbers producing like crazy. These are the Space Master cucumbers in this pot with some snapdragons and my lemon tree. And the lemon tree is actually still going strong out here, even though the temperatures got down to 40. We have trimmed it up a little bit, and it has put out some new growth. But cucumbers still going strong down in here. We've gotten loads of cucumbers. So we still have a lot of cucumbers going strong. We still have the Burpee Pickler cucumbers at the base of our hibiscus trees that still are putting on cucumbers like crazy. You can see one right there. And these just popped up in the last couple of days because I just picked cucumbers a couple days ago Looks like we got one right here that did not pollinate for some reason. And it might have actually got smashed. Got a couple of leaves dying back on it, which we need to get out here and trim. But otherwise, the vines are still very healthy because these were younger. We still have loads of flowers still coming on. These are some of the pansies that we planted from seed. And we had ended up with 8 pansy plants. And they are still going strong. They're getting to the point where they're thinking about blooming. And we still have some of the floss flower down there. Still blooming like crazy. Still plenty of zinnias that are blooming. And we do have some Tahitian squash now that are beginning to get ready. You can see that one down in there. And then we have another one right back there that's not ready yet, still striped. They actually turn a color of butternut squash, and they get really huge. Can be anywhere from 30 pounds or more, but typically about 8 to 12 pounds. And we do have fennel that we had planted a little bit earlier, not very long ago, that is starting to get some bulbs on it now. You can see that. And our bee balm is blooming again. I had trimmed it back. There was some heads on here that had dried out, so I went ahead and pulled the heads off, and it is blooming again. We have harvested all of the corn. There is not any corn left on here, not even corn for seed. So we'll use the rest of this for decoration for Halloween once it completely dries out. And then we have beans in here that are still climbing the corn, as you can see. And we'll finish harvesting that out because it's still blooming and it's still producing. And those were the Kentucky Wonder pole beans and the rattlesnake pole beans. So once those finish up, then we will go ahead and cut these for decoration for Halloween. And we have a few pumpkins. And you can see our converted kiddie pool that had grown all the watermelons. And we went ahead and pulled the watermelons out since they were done and left the strawberries and basil in here. And there is a couple of rosemary back there in the back that still survived through all of the watermelon vines and everything. But anyway, the strawberries are beginning to have runners on them and will get rooted in, and we'll have more strawberries next season, hopefully. And then here is our other yellow pear tomato that is about 6 feet tall as well. Look at all of those new tomatoes on here, still blooming, still producing. We just keep trimming it up. You can see a bloom right there. It just keeps on making tomatoes. And then we still have some random straight 8 cucumbers that are still producing, although most of them have died back. We've got some lemon cucumbers that are still producing. We have borage that is coming up in here because we had a borage plant and it went to seed. So you can see all these new borage plants that are coming up. And we still have some peppers. We did harvest some of the peppers. And that is my grandson's new plant. He loves fuzzy plants. So I got him one of those. And our herb garden out here is still doing very well. And we still have loads of morning glories, still blooming. All sorts of different colors. And I think it's actually going to seed because it has been such a late season. So we may end up with way more morning glories than we wanted next season. And of course we have some radishes in here as well as some lettuce. And all of that is doing very well. And we have some more cucumbers in here. These are Space Master cucumbers. And they do keep producing even though the vines look absolutely terrible at this point. And we are collecting seed off of our cosmos to save for next season. When the seeds begin to look like this is when they are ready to harvest. So we've been getting quite a bit of those. And we've been pulling zinnia heads to dry out for zinnia seeds for next season. And hopefully we'll have some sunflowers that we can pull some seeds from, but they are pretty much getting attacked by the squirrels, so I don't have a whole lot of those left as far as going to seed. And as you can see, everything's looking kind of rough because it's the end of the season, but it is still going. And we have our orange mint and lemon mint that are blooming like crazy and have produced seed because I have mint coming up just about everywhere. We had trimmed up a lot of our basil. This is lemon basil and sweet basil, and we have trimmed up a lot of it, and it is coming back out. Made it a lot more bushy. And then we have a celosia over here that's supposed to end up looking like brain, that is doing fantastic and is doing just that. And then we have our other yellow pear tomato over here in my grandson's little garden, and that one is about 4.5 feet tall and just keeps going and blooming, and tomatoes and all of that. We have a couple on there that are ripe. And our Kellogg's breakfast tomatoes are starting to get a little tinge of color on them, but they just keep producing as well. Our first Kellogg's breakfast tomato is actually all the way at the bottom because the plant has gotten that big now, and you can see just how big that tomato is now. Look at that. Just huge tomatoes on this vine. It's so heavy that it's pulled it down, and I actually have 2 stakes in here, and they're still it's so heavy it's just pulled it down. But you can see we have some really huge tomatoes in there all over the vines. You can see one down there at the base on this side. Just keeps on going with tomatoes. So they have redeemed themselves. And we still have super sauce tomatoes in here that we're just letting finish out. And still have lots of royal burgundy beans that we're letting go to seed, as well as the Kentucky Wonders over here. We're letting those go to seed, and the half runners and rattlesnake pole beans. We still have loads of zinnias over here that are blooming in all different colors. We have asters over here next to where our eggplants are, that since we have cleaned out the sunflowers that had basically died back, that are now ready to bloom. We've got pinks, it looks like, and whites and purples, all kinds of different colors of asters. And we still have eggplants that are forming on the vines. We've got a couple of nice eggplants over here. You can see that one, and then there's another one. So those are continuing to go. We still haven't pulled the potatoes out yet. They have not died back enough. Basically, after I said I was going to withhold water from them, it then rained for 2 days. So we have to give them some more time with drying out to get those finished up. And one of the failures that we've had this season is we do have some butternut squash that's planted right here. There's 4 plants, and they tried to produce some butternut squash, but they have just taken so long that they're not even close to having anything on them. They're just basically right now blooming. But our leeks that we planted over here basically started from seed and then put them out, are getting a lot bigger now that everything's kind of dying back and cleaning out. And then we had planted some more radishes and lettuce and spinach over here, and all of that is coming up like crazy. And we do have an Armenian cucumber that is about 1.5 feet long back in the back, right in there. And then we have more tomatoes over here. These are the old German and giant Oxheart tomatoes. And we've got one changing color right there. Some really nice sized tomatoes over here. And then we have a couple of super sauce in here as well. And we did end up with a, I believe, Tahitian squash over here that is trying to produce, but is so late in the season it won't happen. And we have the artichokes over here that just never came to fruition because it's just too shaded over here. But at least we did get a calendula over here that bloomed like crazy. And our nasturtiums over here bloomed like crazy. And we also had some bachelor buttons that are blooming. And then we have our asparagus through here. One is first season, and the other one is second season. And we have some more cosmos. And we do have a second set of blooming going on with our white rose. And loads of things still going on in the main garden with red curry squash. They're still producing. There's still a red curry squash pops up from time to time and actually gets finished out. And our zinnias, we've started deadheading basically the zinnias and saving those for seed. These are the smaller variety. Some of our zinnias over in the second garden are 4.5, 5 feet tall. They're just huge. And I think they're called the cactus zinnias or California zinnias. And then we also have loads of peppers still coming on. These guys are still blooming, still producing, even though we've had the cool temperatures at night. And they have fallen over. They're just so heavy with peppers. And we've harvested so many, but we still have a lot to harvest and still a lot coming on. And our cauliflower has still not headed up yet. I'm not real sure about it at this point. Last season, we actually were harvesting heads about now, but it did snow when it was when we were harvesting heads. So I'm not sure. We'll keep an eye on it, but it looks like they are starting to try to head up. And we've definitely got the curl in the center. And we still have a few broccoli plants that are coming on.
Mom, tell her I love broccoli.
And my grandson said he loves broccoli. And our cabbages, we still have cabbages coming on, heading up, the red cabbages especially. And my daughter, she cleaned out all of her aquariums. She has several aquariums with fish, and she poured the fish water, basically, on the garden yesterday, and it really perked up these beans. These beans were the third planting and have only been in the ground for about 30 days, and they are blooming and producing. We've got beans on them already.
What about carrots? I love carrots.
My grandson keeps suggesting different plants. Yes, we have loads of Parisian Oxheart carrots in that carrot bed, and they are about the size of a baseball right now, but we want them to get a lot larger because that variety actually can get as big as a softball, but teardrop shaped. And all of our lettuce that we planted is up, and we also planted a row after cleaning out the the carrots. We did plant radishes in here. We planted some daikon radish and some French breakfast radishes, and all of those are coming up, and we actually put those in a row this time. So we have 3 rows, back row being daikon radishes, and the front 2 rows are French breakfast radishes, and we tried to space those out so we can get some really nice radishes out of these guys. And from now on, I believe I'm going to go ahead and plant things in rows and just thin them very well, because we had quite a problem with our beets this season because I was so busy and so tired that I just went ahead and scattered all the seed in there, and you can see what has happened. A lot of them did not even head up. We had lots of pretty greens, but we had some that didn't head up. And then we've got some large beets in there right now that have nice size heads on them, but a lot of them didn't because they just were not enough space. And our Dinosaur Kale is really filling out now. It is nice and big. Not as big as it can be. I've seen it a lot bigger, but they're coming along quite nicely, and they actually will survive a winter, so we might just keep these guys going. And then we've got some really nice turnip heads in there, like that large right now. And then we do have some rutabagas as well, not many as we had last season, because we just didn't eat them like crazy. But we do have some rutabagas in here that are almost as big as some of our pumpkins are. They are huge because we spaced them out quite a bit. And then we have, of course, our pumpkins. We have not harvested these yet. We're going to leave them as long as we possibly can, especially that Boston marrow. Bill, stop! My grandson was poking at the door. Looks like we did lose the second Boston marrow that came up on the plants. Looks like it has died off, and it's probably just because the temperatures have been so cool. But it does have a couple of blooms on the end. It may try again, but it's just way too late in the season, I think. And there's our Russian kale, looking very pretty. A lot of our Swiss chard has died back simply because we have a soot cake holder up here that keeps falling off and kept hitting the Swiss chard when it would fall, and it killed a lot of it out. But we still have some in here. And we do have radishes that are heading up now on the radishes that we planted over here, just kind of willy-nilly. So you can see we do have radish heads coming up, but a lot of them are not heading up, and it might be they're just planted really close together. We kind of just did this as more of a ground cover kind of thing. And then we do have some really nice acorn squash on these guys. Look at that. And each one of them has some really nice acorn squash on them. And then, of course, over in the north section, we have the Big Max pumpkins, which are getting nice and large. We've got a couple of them on there. One just started fairly recently, and it's coming on pretty quick. And then we have some cucumbers out here as well, which have produced on the north side, surprisingly enough. You can see one right there, and another one right here. And with our temperatures in the last few days being in the 70s and 80s, they have really been producing quite nicely. And then we have some acorn squash over here as well that are also producing very well. I thought we had another one in here, but it looks like that one might have been taken by a squirrel. Here's another one right here. And then here's our Big Max pumpkin right there. And then we actually have more strawberries that are coming on in our strawberry kiddie pool. This is the first one that we had. It's now 2 seasons old. So we've got loads more in there. We actually have a cucumber here that is producing as well. We've already pulled one, and it's still blooming and producing cucumbers. And it might actually do that for a while because this is kind of protected a little bit with the mesh and everything in the kiddie pool. And it doesn't take long once a cucumber starts for it to come to fruition. Less than a week sometimes. And we have another cucumber plant mixed in down in here. You see a cucumber right there. So We have had loads of produce out of the garden this season. Very thankful for that. Even though it has pushed the limit, basically, on how long it can go. But just so many things still going strong in this garden, even though we're really past the end of season time. And also, if anyone knows that's been following the channel, you know that I've been taking master gardening classes. I am now on the 3rd week of master gardener classes. I've taken 2 quizzes, 3rd quiz coming up, which I have done pretty well on those quizzes. I've missed on the first quiz, just basically a simple question, but 2nd quiz I made 100 on. You get 2 attempts to make the quizzes, so that does help out quite a bit. And I'm a really busy person, so it's very hard for me to study sometimes. And I might know a lot of the terms, but I don't know the scientific terms for some things. But I do know quite a few plants out there. But anyway, I'm doing the Master Gardener course. I'm really enjoying it. And I am going to follow through with the certification. And there's a lot of things that go along with that, like volunteering 40 hours of your time, or produce to a food pantry, all kinds of things that you need to do to get the Master Gardener certification. So there's lots of things to look forward to in the next couple of years, but the Master Gardener certification is definitely one of those to look forward to. So I'm having fun with it. So like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for notices on new videos as they come out, and we will see you in the next one.